Chapter 9. It isn't painful morphing, I mean. I petted Homer for a little while, feeling like a complete and total fool. This is the stupidest thing I have ever done, I told Tobias. Look, you have to concentrate. At least I did. I mean, I formed the mental picture of dude, right? I thought about becoming him. I see. So I have to meditate on becoming a dog. That's right. You have to think about it. You have to want it. Normally I would figure he was nuts, but I just seen him turn into a cat, so if he was nuts, so was I. I thought about Homer becoming I I thought about becoming Homer. As I stroked his fur, I formed a picture in my mind of me becoming Homer. Homer became weirdly quiet while I did it, like he was asleep. Only his eyes were open. Just like dude, Tobias commented. I think the process kind of puts the animal in a trance or something. He's just scared because he thinks his master is a Looney Tune. I continued stroking Homer's fur and concentrating, and Homer continued to lie very still. Okay, now what? I asked Tobias. Now we better put Homer outside. He might get slightly freaked by watching you turn into him. It took Homer about 10 seconds to come out of his trance, but then he jumped up normal, hyperactive Homer again. I put him outside in the yard. Tobias was sitting patiently when I got back, just waiting. Give it a try, he urged me. Think about it, want it. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes. I recalled the picture of Homer I formed in my mind. I thought about becoming Homer. I opened my eyes. Bow wow, I said, laughing. I guess it didn't work for me, Tobias. The back of my hand itched and I scratched it. Jake, Tobias said. What? Look at your hand. I looked at my hand. It was covered with orange fur. I jumped about a foot straight in the air. Oh! I stared at my hand. The fur had just stopped growing. Don't be scared, Tobias advised. Go with it. Now you stop the morph, you have to concentrate. My hand, I said. Fur. Yeah, and your ears, Tobias said. I ran to the mirror over my dresser. My ears had moved. They had slid up the side of my head and were definitely larger than they should be. Go on, it's so cool, Tobias said. Cool? It's creepy, weird, look at my hands, I have fur. You have to do this, Tobias said. I don't have to do anything, I said sullenly. Tobias nodded. Okay, you're right. You don't have to do this. You can just forget what we saw last night and forget what we know. And as the Yerks take over more and more people, you can just ignore it. We can all just go along and grow up in a world where human beings are nothing but bodies to be used by murdering aliens. Okay, when you put it that way, it didn't sound like a great... when you put it that way, it didn't sound like a great option. Come on, Tobias urged. I swallowed hard. I closed my eyes and thought of Homer, of being Homer. I felt the itch mess again, and when I opened my eyes, there was fur growing on my arms, and fur growing out of my face, and fur curling up from under my collar. My legs itched, and I realized they were growing fur too. My bones, they didn't exactly hurt, but they did feel strange. You know when you go to the dentist and he gives you Novocaine so the drill doesn't really hurt, but you know it should hurt? I guess that's what it's like. My bones shortened. I could feel my backbone stretching as it extended out into a tail. There was a scraping sound as my knees suddenly reversed directions. I toppled forward, no longer able to walk upright. When my hands hit the floor, they weren't exactly hands anymore. The fingers were gone. All that was left were short, stubby nails. My face bulged out. My eyes drew closer together. Tobias got up and tilted the mirror down so I could see myself. I watched the final transformation as the last patches of my pink human flesh disappeared, and my tail, sprouted to its full length. I was a dog. It was insane, but just the same, I was a dog. I knew I should be scared by all of this, only I wasn't. I was ecstatic, I was giddy, I was thrilled. Happiness just washed over me. Happiness filled me up. I breathed in through this ridiculously long nose, and wow, the smells. Oh man, you have no idea. I breathed in, and right away I knew my mom was toasting a waffle in the kitchen. And I knew Tobias had walked through the territory of a big male dog. And I knew things I couldn't even explain in human words. It was like being blind all of your life, and then suddenly you could see. I ran over to Tobias and sniffed his shoes. I wanted a better idea of who that big male dog was. From the scent of his urine picked up by Tobias' shoe, I got a sort of picture of him. See, Homer knew him. His owners called him Streak. He was neutered like me. He spent most of his time in the yard, but he broke out sometimes by digging under the fence. He got a mix of canned and dry food, Purina. No table scraps, unlike me. All this information made me happy all over again, and I had to wag my tail. I looked up at Tobias. He looked tall and strange and not very colorful. I wasn't all that interested in looking at stuff. Smelling things was way better. Intruder! There was a noise in the yard. A dog, an unknown dog in my yard. Intruder! I ran to the window and perched against it and cut loose. I barked as loud as I could. No way some unknown dog was just going to walk through my yard. Jake, get a grip, Tobias said. That's Homer out there. Homer what? But I tucked my tail between my legs. What's going on? Jake, listen. Jake, listen to me, Tobias said. It's just what happened to me when I morphed into a cat. The dog brain is part of your brain now. You have to deal with it. But there's a dog in my yard. That's Homer, Jake. You are Jake. You're just in a body copied from Homer's DNA. That's the real Homer out there. You put him out there. Focus, Jake. Focus. I took several deep breaths. The smells, oh boy. There was this one smell I couldn't quite. Focus, Jake, I ordered myself. Focus. Slowly I calmed the dog part of my mind. I let go of the smells and I let go of the sound of a dog out in my yard. It wasn't easy. That first time. Being a dog is so completely amazing. For one thing, there's nothing halfway about it. You're never sort of happy, you're happy. You're never sort of bummed, you're totally, completely bummed. And boy, when you get hungry in dog form, you're in the nuts. You are nuts on the subject of food. There was a knock on my bedroom door. Yes, my bedroom door. I knew who I was again. I was Jake. Jake with 4 legs, a tail, and a snout, but Jake. The knocking seemed incredibly loud to the dog's ears. Jake, you got Homer in there with you? My brother's Tom's voice. Mom's on the phone. Stop him yapping. He opened the door and stepped in. He looked around confused. Who are you? He demanded of Tobias. I'm Tobias. I'm a friend of Jake's. Well, where is he? Oh, he's around, Tobias said. Tom looked down at me. There was a strange smell about him. My dog brain couldn't quite identify it. It was an unsettling, dangerous smell. And somehow in my own mind, I heard the echo of a laugh. A very human laugh. I heard that night before at Visor... A very human laugh. I heard that night as Visor 3 swallowed the Endolite whole. Bad dog, Tom said to me. You keep quiet, bad dog. And then he left. I was devastated. I wasn't a bad dog. Not really. I was just barking because some other dog was in my yard. Bad dog? I was a bad dog? No, I wanted to be a good dog. I crept into the corner utterly miserable. Tobias knelt down and patted my head. When he scratched me behind the ears, I felt a little better. Chapter 10. I called all the others on the phone after I got done morphing back into my normal body. Tobias took off on his own, saying he'd hook up with us later at Cassie's farm. I was on the kitchen phone with Cassie when Tom came in. Oh, there you are, he said. I covered my mouthpiece. Yeah, Tobias said you were looking for me before? I just wanted you to shut your dog up, Tom said. He turned a chair around backwards and straddled it. I hesitated. For some reason, I didn't want to talk to Cassie with Tom listening in. I'll just see you there in a couple hours, okay? I told Cassie. I hung up. I looked over at Tom. He's bigger than me, even though I'm not exactly small. His hair is darker, almost black, while mine is brown. I had almost trusted him. He wasn't like a lot of guys who pound on their younger brother. We were always kind of close, at least until the last year or so. Somehow we just weren't spending as much time together. Partly it was that he was involved in a club called The Sharing. They did all this stuff together, so he was busy a lot of the time. The thing is, Tom should have been the very first person I told about all the stuff that had happened. But as I was sitting there watching him munch toast, I just had this feeling that said, no, this has to be a secret, even from Tom. Instead, I told him the other thing I was afraid to tell him. I didn't make the team, I said. What team? He asked. He looked puzzled. What team? The basketball team. Your old team. Oh, too bad, he said. Too bad? I repeated. I could not believe how little he seemed to care. It's just sports, he said. He munched another big bite of toast. Just sports? I couldn't stop repeating what he said. Tom saying sports were no big deal? No way. He lived for sports. Yeah, I guess I just don't have your total skill. He shrugged. Well, I quit the team anyways, a couple days ago. I practically fell off my chair. You quit? You quit the team and you didn't even tell me about it? What's the deal? I didn't say anything because I knew you and Dad would make a big thing of it. Look, there are more important things than throwing balls through a hoop, he said. He had this mysterious look in his eyes. I figured he meant girls were the most important thing. Besides, he added, we do much cooler stuff at the sharing. Maybe you should join up. I was stunned. Obviously, Tom and I were further apart than I realized. When we were done talking, I headed outside to mow the lawn. I mow the lawn every Saturday. It's my major chore, that and taking out the trash, which I hate, because we have to do all this recycling and stuff. When I was finally done mowing and trimming and raking, I hopped on my bike and took off. I had arranged with everyone to hook up at Cassie's farm. It isn't exactly a normal farm, although it although it had been in the old days, and they still have horses and cows. But now a big red main barn is the wildlife rehabilitation clinic. Cassie's father runs it. They take in any kind of injured animal except pet type animals. There are always a lot there are always lots of birds along with squirrels, deer, skunks, and so on. Sometimes they get a bobcat or a fox or even a wolf. Cassie's mom is a vet too, but she works at the gardens. That's this huge amusement park that's also a zoo, or I guess they call it a wildlife park. Luckily, Cassie really loves animals. It would have been hard having her parents if she didn't really love animals. Me, I have a dog. Tobias has a cat. Cassie had everything from a porcupine to polar bears. By the time I got there, Marco, Tobias, and Rachel were already waiting outside the barn. Rachel had her face turned up to catch the tanning rays of the sun. Cassie wasn't there yet. I figured she was doing chores. She had a ton of work to do around there. Hey guys, I said. Rachel opened her eyes and immediately thrust a newspaper at me. Look, she said, pointing to an article. I started to read the article. It wasn't very long. It said that the police claimed there had been a disturbance in the construction site that night before. It said several people had called claiming they'd seen flying saucers landing there, followed by bright lights. Cool, I said, looking up. So the cops know about it. Now that's a relief. Keep reading, Rachel said. The article went on to say that the police had arrived on the scene and found a group of teenagers playing with fireworks. The teenagers had run away. Fireworks were discovered at the scene. The police spokesman had a laugh at the reports of flying saucer. It was just a bunch of kids playing where they shouldn't have been, he said. There were definitely no flying saucers. People shouldn't be so quick to believe nonsense. But this is a total lie, I said. Ding, 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 ding. Correct answer, Johnny. Tell our contestants what he has won, Marco said. Did you see the last part, Rachel pressed? I read the last sentence. It froze me up good, I can tell you. Police were offering a reward for the information on the teenagers. They're looking for us, Marco said. Why would the police why would they lie? I wondered aloud, but the answer was pretty obvious. Marco laughed his sardonic laugh. Let's see, Captain Brilliant. Would it be because the cops are controllers? Probably not all the cops, Tobias pointed out. If the police have been infiltrated by controllers, who knows how many others have too, Rachel asked. Teachers, people in the government, the newspapers, and TV. Math teachers for sure, Marco joked. We all looked around nervously like we expected to find ourselves surrounded by controllers. I tried to tell myself it was all a dream, Rachel said. Been there, I said. For a while, no one said anything. We all felt the same terrible feeling, like we're all alone. Like suddenly we're dealing with stuff that was way, way over our heads. Marco spoke first. Look, why do we have to deal with this? I say we just forget about it. We never talk about it. We never morph. We just deal with our own lives. Tobias and Rachel both looked at me. They were waiting for me to argue with Marco. Marco, I halfway agree with you, I started to say. Suddenly, Marco just went ballistic. We could get killed, he yelled. Don't you get it? You saw what happened to that Andalite. I mean, this is radical stuff, Jake. This is for real. Real. We could all get killed. Tobias was looking at Marco with his sideways look like he thought maybe Marco was some kind of coward. I knew better. Marco had his reasons. Marco shook his head. In a quiet voice, he said, Look, I think these controllers are jerks. But if something happened to me, my dad, he wouldn't be able to handle it. 2 years ago, Marco's mom died. She drowned. They never even found her body. Marco's dad lost it big time. He totally fell apart. He quit his job as an industrial engineer because he couldn't handle being around other people. Now he was working as a night janitor, making barely enough to support Marco. He spent his days sleeping or watching TV with the sound off. You can all think I'm a weasel if you want, Marco said. I don't care. But if I get killed or something happens, my dad will flat out die. He's only hanging in there because of me. I wondered if I should pat him on the back or something. But if I had, Marco being Marco would have just said something sarcastic. There's Cassie, Rachel said, shielding her eyes, looking off across the open field. A horse galloping across the green, its black mane was flying in the warm breeze. I didn't see any rider. The horse slowed, trotting closer, and suddenly I had a strange feeling about the horse. Cassie and I have been here for a while, Rachel said, by way of explanation. She's really good at this. Look how fast she can do it. The horse snickered softly. Then the animal began to melt. The big brown eyes became slightly smaller. The long muzzle became a human mouth. A thing that was part horse and part Cassie smiled at us with big horse teeth and said, "Hey kids." Marco suddenly sat down very hard. He had never seen morphing. "It's cool," I said, trying to sound very relaxed. "It's just Cassie." I decided I'd better be gentle and look away. I decided I'd better be a gentleman and look away. After all, when Tobias and I had morphed, we kind of morphed right out of our clothes. But I noticed that as Cassie emerged from her horse, she was wearing a skin-tight blue outfit. One of those outfits girls wear to do aerobics. I watched and saw something beautiful happen. For just a few seconds, she stayed half horse and half human. She reminded me of the Analyte. I realized it was deliberate. Cassie was controlling the way she morphed. Geez, Rachel, I said. You're right, Cassie is good. Suddenly, we heard the sound of tires on gravel. We all spun around. Down the gravel and dirt road came a single black and white car. The cops, Tobias said. Chapter 11. Cassie, morph now, I snapped. The police car was coming fast. We do not want to have to explain a half horse, half person. Which way should I morph? Cassie wailed. Horse or human? She reared up slightly on her hind legs. I knew what was happening. She was fighting the horse urge to panic. Human, 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 I said. Everybody stand in front of her. The police car squealed to a stop, sending the gravel flying. A single policeman stepped out. I waved at him. Morning, he said. You kids hiding something? I wanted to look over my shoulder and see what kind of shape Cassie was in, but that would have been a mistake. Hiding something? I repeated. Step aside, all of you, he ordered. We did, revealing Cassie full human. The police looked puzzled. Then he shrugged. I breathed a huge sigh of relief. Can we help you, officer? Rachel asked, in her best responsible voice. We're making some inquiries, he said, looking at Cassie like something must be wrong with her. We're looking for some kids who were shooting off fireworks in a construction site across from the mall last night. Suddenly, Marco started coughing. Something the matter with you? Something the matter with you? The policeman asked. Nope, I said. Nothing wrong with him. We want these kids, the policeman said. We want them real bad. See, it was dangerous what they did. Could have gotten someone hurt. So we want to find these kids. Suddenly I knew he was one of them. The policeman was a controller. I looked at his face. It seemed normal, but in the inside, his head was a creature from another planet, an evil, parasitic slug. Just behind those normal, human-looking eyes, something vile lurked. I don't know anything about it, I lied. He looked at me real close, and I began to sweat. Hey, you know what? He said. You look familiar. You look like a young man I know named Tom. He's my brother, I said. I was trying not to let my voice go weird. But I couldn't forget the fact that it wasn't really a human cop I was talking to. It was a yerk. This wasn't even a human anymore. Not really. It was a human controller. The human brain was totally enslaved. Tom's your brother, eh? Well, he's a good kid. I know him from the sharing. I'm one of the adult supervisors. Great group, the sharing. You should come to a meeting. Yeah, Tom invited me already, I said. We have a lot of fun. Yeah, I repeated. Well, you can call me if you hear anything about these kids in the construction site. I should warn you, they may come up with some wild story to conceal their guilt. But you're too smart to believe a bunch of crazy lies, aren't you? He's a regular genius, Marco said. Finally, the policeman took off. Okay, Rule number 1, Rachel announced firmly. We don't do anything to attract attention. We have to be secret about everything, especially morphing. Cassie looked embarrassed. Yeah, it was stupid of me. It's just, man, it's so amazing running like that. Out in the open space. Running and running. How did you manage to morph with clothing? I asked. When Tobias and I did it, well, let's just say it's a good thing neither of you girls was around. It took some practice, Cassie said, and it can only be tight clothing. I tried it with a coat on and it got shredded. So I don't know what we'll do in the winter. That's not going to be a problem, Marco said firmly, because there isn't going to be any more morphing. Maybe Marco is right, Rachel said. This is too big for us. We're just kids. We need to find someone important to tell us this. Someone we need to find someone important to tell this to. Someone we can trust. We can't trust anyone, Tobias said flatly. Anyone could be a controller. We tell the wrong person, we're all dead, and the whole world will be doomed. I don't want to stop morphing, Cassie said. Do you realize all we could do with this power? We could communicate with animals, maybe. Help save endangered species. Humans may be the next endangered species, Cassie, Tobias said quietly. What do you say, Jake? Cassie asked. Me? I shrugged. I don't know. Marco's right. We could all get killed. Rachel's right. This is too major for a bunch of kids, I hesitated. I didn't like what I was about to say, but Tobias is right too. I mean, the world is in danger. We can't trust anyone. So what do we do? Rachel demanded. Hey, it's not up to me to decide, I said hotly. Let's take a vote, Rachel said. I vote we try to live long enough to get our driver's license, Marco said. I vote we do what the Andalite said. Fight, Tobias said. You've never been in a fight, Marco sneered. You can't handle the punks at school. Suddenly, now you want to kick butt on Visor 3 Freakazoid? Tobias said nothing, but a blush spread up his neck. I vote with Tobias, Rachel said, giving Marco a dirty look. I wish we could dump all this on someone else, but we can't. Let's think this over for a while, Cassie said. This is a big decision. I mean, it's not like we're deciding whether to wear jeans or a skirt. I was relieved. Thank goodness for Cassie. Yeah, let's wait for a while. Agreed. In the meantime, no one say anything to anyone. We just go back to normal life. There was a smirk on Marco's face. He thought he won, but I wasn't so sure. Tobias was still blushing. He sent a secret, grateful look to Rachel. Marco and I took off toward my house again, trying to act normal. We talked about baseball season. We talked about who was going to slaughter who in the Dead Zone 5, which is this CD game we were going to play on my computer. By the time we reached my house, we run out of stuff to talk about. We played Dead Zone for a while. Neither of us did very well. Face it, games weren't all that interesting anymore. My mind was totally not there. Tom came in after a while. Hey, you guys, he said. Can 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 I give the game a try? It has been months since Tom had done anything with me, like play a game. Sure, Marco moved over and gave Tom the controller stick. We played for a few minutes and Tom did pretty well. But then it was like he got bored or something. He gave the controller back to Marco and just sat back and watched. You guys hear about all this stuff going on with the construction site last night? He asked me. Marco jerked in surprise. What stuff? I said. It was in the newspaper, Tom said casually. They said some kids were shooting off fireworks. A bunch of morons who lived around there decided it was a flying saucers or something. He laughed. Flying saucers, right? Marco and I both laughed too. Yeah, and it was just these kids playing with fireworks, Tom said. Uh-huh, I said. I was trying very hard to concentrate on the game. You were out at the mall last night, weren't you? Tom asked me. Uh-huh. Did you come back through the construction site? I shook my head. No way. Didn't see any kids hanging around there, maybe? Nope. It's not like I'd get them in trouble, Tom said. I mean, I think it's kind of cool they're just shooting off fireworks and they get all these people terrified of flying saucers. Mm-hmm. Flying saucers, he said. He laughed again. Only complete dips believe that kind of stuff. He leaned close. You don't believe in that, do you? Aliens, spaceships, and little green men from Mars? I wanted to say no. None of them had been little or green, but I just said, no way. Tom nodded and stood up. Cool. You know, Jake, I feel like we haven't been hanging around much lately. I guess not, I agreed. That's too bad, he said. He snapped his finger like he just had an idea. You know what? You should join the sharing. Marco, too. Why should we join? Marco asked. Tom just grinned. I gotta go, he said. He just gave me a playful punch on the shoulder. Catch you guys later. And don't forget, let me know if you hear anything about those kids at the construction site. He left. Marco looked at me. Jake, he's one of them. What? Tom. Tom is one of them. Your brother is a controller. Chapter 12. I swung my fist and caught Marco in the side of the head. He jumped back and I swung again, but Marco was quick. He dodged my second swing. I slipped and went down. Marco snatched the bedspread off my bed, threw it over me, tangled up my arms, and sat on me. Jake, quit acting like a stupid jerk, he said. I was trying to grab him, but he had me pretty good. Take that back, I yelled. Not likely, Marco said. You think it's coincidence he's suddenly all interested in what happened at the construction site? I knew it looked bad. Even while I was struggling to get free and kick Marco's butt, I had this sudden flash about the smell I noticed on Tom when I was morphed into a dog. There was that laugh I heard at the sight. But no, this was Tom, my big brother. Tom would never, ever let some slimy creep into his head. Never. I'll let you up if you calm down, Marco said. Look, maybe I'm wrong, okay? I stopped struggling, and Marco let me up. You have to admit, Jake, it doesn't look good. Tom is not one of them, okay? That's final, I said. Whatever, Marco said. Just don't punch me again, 'cause I might have to hit you back. Just then I heard a fluttering noise at my window, like someone beating on it very softly. I went to the window and followed by Marco. There was a bird there, some kind of huge bird like an eagle or a hawk, beating its wings against the window. Let me in, all right? I can't hover here forever. Marco's eyes went wide. He'd heard it too. I opened the window and the bird flew straight in. It landed on my dresser. It was almost 2 feet long, mostly brown, with gnarled talons and sharp hooked beak. Some kind of eagle or something, Marco said. A red-tailed hawk, actually, Tobias said. Is that you, Tobias? Marco demanded. I thought we weren't going to do any more of this morphing. I never agreed to that. Well, morph back, Tobias, I said. You know what the analytes said. Never stay in a form for more than 2 hours. Tobias hesitated. He tilted his hawk's head and peered at me with an incredible concentrated gaze. At last he hopped over onto my bed. Let me tell you something. It is beyond weird watching feathers turn into skin. The brown feathers ran together and merged and turned pink. It was like the feathers were melting, like they had turned into wax and were being heated up. The beak disappeared quickly and lips grew out of it. Talons split into 5 and became toes. Halfway through the process of changing, Tobias was a lump half pink, half brown, with feather-like patterns still visible on his back and chest. His face was small and mostly human, except that he still had those sharp, alert hawk eyes. 2 tiny shriveled arms protruded from the front of his chest, with his fingers like a baby's. All in all, it was pretty disgusting. It was pretty disgust. All in all, it was a pretty disgusting sight. But the human DNA asserted itself over the hawks, and he became more normal. About 3 minutes after he started the change, he was completely normal Tobias, sitting naked on the end of my bed. I haven't figured out how to morph clothes yet, like Cassie, he said sheepishly. Can I borrow some? I loaned him a pair of pants and a shirt, but my shoes were all the wrong size. That was the coolest thing I've ever done in my life, Tobias said. His whole face was glowing. I was riding the thermals. What's a thermal? I asked. That's when there's a warm air rising up from the ground. It forms this cushion under your wings. You can float up there like a mile up. You just surf the thermals. You guys got to do it. It's the best thing I've ever done. Tobias, how on earth did you do a hawk morph? I demanded. There's an injured hawk right there in Cassie's barn, he said. There's this cool osprey too, but I decided on the hawk. How did you fly if the hawk you morphed from was injured? I wondered. Mark shook his head. Jake, do you pay attention in biology class? DNA has nothing to do with some injury. DNA wasn't broken, just a wing. I ignored Marco. You're lucky Cassie's dad didn't catch you, I said to Tobias. He's so depressed, Tobias commented. Who's depressed? Cassie's dad? No, the hawk, I mean. I think he knows they aren't trying to hurt him or anything, but he can't stand being cooped up there while his wing heals. Tobias' eyes darkened. It's terrible when birds have to be locked up in cages. They should be free. Yeah, free the birds, Marco commented sarcastically. I'll get the bumper sticker printed up. You wouldn't have that attitude if you'd been up there with me, Tobias said angrily. It was cool being a cat and all, but a hawk? It's just absolute freedom. I hadn't ever seen Tobias so happy. I mean, Tobias has a pretty lousy home life. Thinking about it, I suddenly had this feeling. I repeated the warning. No more than 2 hours in any morph, right? You keep track of the time, right? Tobias smiled. Yeah. I don't have a watch or anything, but with a hawk's eyes, you can actually see the hands of someone's watch when they're half a mile below you. It's like being Superman. You can fly, plus you have supervision. Now he's Superman, Marco muttered. I was looking around. I guess I thought I might be able to see something from the air, Tobias said. I was looking for something that might be a yerk pool. The phrase sounded vaguely familiar. I remember Visor 3 saying something about it. Yerk pools? What's a yerk pool? I asked Tobias. It's where the yerk live. It's where the yerk live in the natural state. Every 3 days, a yerk has to leave his host body and go into the yerk pool to soak up nutrients, especially cadrona rays. Marco and I exchanged a suspicious look. Neither of us knew any of this. At the end, Tobias explained, when the Andalite told us all to run for it, I stayed behind for a few seconds. I guess maybe I was too scared to even run. I shook my head. I knew better. Tobias just hadn't wanted to leave the Andalite alone. I think maybe the Andalite meant even more to Tobias than the rest of us. Anyway, he gave up visions. He gave me visions. Anyway, he gave me visions. I guess you call them pictures, information. A lot of it all at once, all jumbled. I haven't even started to sort it all out, but I do know about the yerks, the yerk pools, and cadrona rays. Marco held up his hand, silencing Tobias. Let me check the door, he said. He went to my door and peeked out into the hallway. All clear, he announced. Tobias gave Marco a questioning look. Tom, Marco said. He's one of them. Don't make me hurt you, I warned him angrily. Tom is not a controller. Either way, we should be careful, Tobias said. He lowered his voice. The Cadrona is a device that produces Cadrona particles. See, it's like this little portable version of the Yerk's own homeworld, sun. The Yerk needs Cadrona particles to live, like a human needs vitamins or whatever. The Cadrona particles are beamed from wherever the Cadrona is, concentrated into the Yerk pool. Once every 3 days, every Yerk has to leave his host and go into the pool. They soak up the particles, and then they re-enter the host body. What does this have to do with you flying around like Superman? I asked. Well, it seems dumb now, but I was thinking maybe I could see the Yerk pool. He made a rueful smile. I saw a lot of swimming pools and some ponds. You get up there and you realize there are a lot of ponds and lakes and streams everywhere. But I didn't see anything special. And what if you found a Yerk pool? Then what? Marco demanded. Then we'd blow it up, Tobias said. Wrong, Marco said. We decided not to get into this. No, we decided not to decide yet, I said. Well, I've decided, Tobias said. Suddenly the wimp is a hero, Marco sneered. This time Tobias didn't blush. Maybe I just found something worth fighting for, Marco. You don't even fight for yourself, Marco said. That was before, Tobias said softly. Before the Andalite, before he died trying to save us. I can't let that go. I can't let him die for nothing. So whatever you guys decide, I'm going to fight. Chapter 13. We find the Yerk pool, Tobias said, and when we do, we blow it up and kill every one of those evil slugs. I expected Marco to start yelling, but Marco is pretty smart. He could tell that Tobias reached me with his talk about Andalites. So he just smiled a little sneakily. Remember that cop today, the one who is interested in finding whoever was at the construction site? The cop who is probably a controller? What about him, I said. Well, let's see. He invites you to join the sharing, and now comes along Tom, and he's interested in what happened at the construction site. And guess what? Tom also invites you to join the sharing. Tobias nodded in agreement. Maybe the sharing is an organization for controllers. Marco smiled. He's my best friend and all, but sometimes Marco really makes me mad. We're pretty sure the cop is a controller, and I don't care what you say, Jake, I think Tom is too. So here's the deal. You want to get into this fight against the Yerks? Marco asked me. Fine, let's see how much you want to do it when it turns out it's your own brother you have to destroy. That stopped me cold. It's not exactly some video game, is it? Marco said. This is reality. You don't know anything about reality, Jake. Nothing bad has ever really happened to you. You have this perfect family like I used to have. His voice cracked a little. He never talked about his mom's death. I realized he was right. I didn't know about reality, not the way reality had happened to Marco and Tobias. So maybe we just walk away from this, Marco said. Let someone else fight this fight. Sorry about the Endolite, but I've got enough death in my family. No, I said, surprising myself. The Andalite gave us this morphing power for a reason. It wasn't just for the fun of being a dog or a horse or a bird. He hoped we would fight. Then maybe Tom is the enemy, Marco said. Maybe it's just your own brother you'll end up destroying. Yes, I said. My throat felt all tight. Maybe that's what will happen. Maybe not. But the first step is to find out more. And I think maybe the way to do that is to check out this meaning of the sharing. Tonight I'll call the others. And when anyone wants to come, cool. You want to stay out of it, Marco? That's cool too.
He hesitated. He sent Tobias an angry look, but he said, "Okay, it's just a meeting, right? We go and see. I'm in for that." I called the others. Rachel agreed quickly. Cassie had to think about it for a little while, but she agreed too. I told Tom we were interested in attending the meeting. Me, Marco, Rachel, and Cassie. We'd already decided Tobias would be there too, only in a different way. "Tonight's a great meeting to come to," Tom said enthusiastically. "We're having a bonfire on the beach. You know, hanging out, playing games and stuff. We play night volleyball, which is so funny because half the time the guys can't even see the ball. It's great. It's the best organization. You'll love it." Listening to him, it sure didn't seem like the sharing was connected with the Yerks. You couldn't really picture Visor 3 or a bunch of taxons playing volleyball. I was thinking maybe we were all just nuts. The sharing was probably just like some new kind of co-ed Boy Scouts or something. It wasn't that far to the beach, so we decided not to drive there with Tom. We walked. Tobias walked part ways with us, then he stepped behind a dark dune as we got close to the shore. A few minutes later, we saw a hawk take flight. There aren't many thermals at night, so he had to work to get the altitude. But then I guess he found a decent enough updraft because he soared up and away till he disappeared. "I have got to try that," Cassie said. "It looks wonderful." "Yeah," I agreed. Ahead, the bonfire burned bright on the dark beach. People were all around it, playing, talking, eating, kids from schools, adults, people I didn't know, others I did. Were they all controllers? I wondered. How could I ever know? And was my own brother one of them? After about an hour of hanging out there on the beach, I was sure I was nuts. There was no way these guys were aliens. We played some volleyball. We played some volleyball, me and Tom together on one team. We ate the barbecued ribs they had. I mean, it was just like some normal good times. The sand was still warm. The night air was chilly. But near the fire, it was nice. "Now you see why I enjoy this?" Tom asked me. "It's cool," I said. I looked around at all the people having fun. I didn't realize it was so much fun. "Well, that's not all it is," Tom said. "I mean, it's more than just fun. The sharing can do all kinds of things for you, once you're a full member." "How do you get to be a full member?" I asked. He smiled mysteriously. "Oh, that will come later. First, you become an associate member. Later, the leaders will decide whether to ask you to become a full member. Once you become a full member, the world changes." At that moment, something weird happened. I was looking at Tom and he was smiling at me. But then his face kind of twitched. His head started to pull to one side like he was trying to shake his head, only he couldn't quite do it. For just a split second, there was a look in his eye, scared or something. He was looking right at me. It was like some different person, some scared person was looking out of those same eyes. Then he went back to normal, or what looked like normal. "I have to go for a while now," he said. "The full members have a separate meeting. You guys stay here and have fun. Have some have some more barbecue. It's great, isn't it?" With that, he was gone into the night. I felt like I had swallowed barbed wire. Marco and Cassie came over. They had just finished playing frisbee in the surf with some other kids. Marco was laughing. "Okay," he said, "I admit it. I was wrong. These are just normal people having a good time, and Tom is not a controller." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Marco was wrong. I knew what I seen in Tom's eyes. He was trying to warn me. Somehow he had managed to gain control of his face for just a second before the yerk in his head crushed him. Tom, the real Tom, not the yerk slug in his brain, had tried to warn me. Chapter 14. "They're all going off to separate meetings," I said. "All the full members. I'd sure like to know what's going on in that meeting." I struggled to sound normal, but my insides were churning. I saw people heading that way, Rachel pointed. Let's see if we can get close, I said. What's going on? Marco asked. I thought we just decided everything was normal here. It was Cassie who answered him. Nothing is normal here, she said. Can't you feel it? She shivered. All these so-called full members, they're all being so perfectly nice, so perfectly helpful, they're so perfectly normal. It's abnormal. And all the time their eyes are following watching you like a hungry dog watching a bone. Creepy, Rachel agreed. Like if you took cheerleaders, combined them with gym teachers, and made them all drink 10 cups of coffee. They're all just a little too happy, aren't they? Marco admitted. People keep telling me how all their problems disappear once they become a full member of the sharing. It's like some cult or something. I'm getting into that secret meeting, I said. I had to know. I had to be dead sure. Let's get away from the fire, over behind the lifeguard stand. How are you going to get into that meeting? Marco asked. They won't worry about some stray dog that's walking along the beach, I said. Some stray? Oh, Marco said. Good idea, Cassie said. I'll do it too, but the only morph I can do is a horse. They would notice a horse. I checked to see that no one could see us. I waved overhead. A few seconds later, Tobias came swooping silently out of the starlit sky. He landed on the lifeguard stand. What's up? The full members are off in some private get-together, I told him. Do you know where they are? Of course. With these eyes, I could see the mice scampering through the dune grass. Nice, plump, tasty-looking things. Tobias, get a grip. Don't start eating mice just because you're in a hawk body. What's next, roadkill? He didn't say anything. Maybe he was offended at my suggestion that he would ever eat roadkill, or worse, maybe he wasn't offended. Where are all the full members? I asked. About 100 yards down the beach. There's a little bowl-like area formed by the dunes. There are people posted all around, like guards. I nodded. Good job, Tobias. You've been in that body for more than an hour. You need to morph back. No, I'll keep watch from above for a little while longer, he said. No, Tobias, I said sharply. You need to morph back. You've done what we needed you to do. There's a little problem. I don't exactly have any clothes on. Marco has your clothes in a bag. Rachel and Cassie will turn away while you morph. Cassie grinned. I am going to have to teach you boys how to morph clothing. Still, Tobias hesitated. I hate changing back. It's like going back into a prison or something. I hate it when I don't have my wings. Tobias, you can always return to your hawk morph later, Rachel reassured him. Now come on, both of you. I'll look the other way so you delicate boys won't get offended. I took a deep breath. It was only my second morph. It still seemed totally ridiculous that I was even thinking about becoming a dog. But as I concentrated, I could begin to feel the itchiness and squirmy feeling as Homer's DNA combined with the Andalite's technology began to change me. At the same time, I could see fingers growing from the ends of Tobias's wings. Keep a grip on your human side, Cassie warned me. We can't have you off chasing cats or whatever. You need to focus hard on staying in control. I started to say yes, I know, but it came out ruff, ruff, ruff. I was already too changed to make normal human speech. I thought about my answer instead. Yes, I know, Cassie. Don't worry. But I do worry, she said softly. I nuzzled her hand with my cold nose, and she patted my head. I set off across the sand. Cassie had been right to warn me. The dunes, the surf, the low chirping of seabirds in their hidden nests, all of it was so perfect for distracting my dog mind. I heard something breathing in the seagrass, and then it broke and I ran. I was off after it. Before I could even think, it ran and I chased. I think it may have been a chipmunk or something. I never could be sure because it found a hole and went diving in. I dug frantically in the sand for a while before my human brain realized, whoa, Jake, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Stop it. I made myself walk toward the meeting. I could hear the murmur of voices. I started to creep closer. Then I realized that was dumb. Dogs don't creep around. They walk or run. If I went around acting like a spy dog, that would make people pay attention. So I wandered along like a dog out for an evening stroll on the beach. My tongue lolled out of my mouth. My tail wagged occasionally. The only thing I had to be careful of was not to let Tom see me too clearly. After all, I looked exactly like Homer. Basically, I was Homer. I approached the edge of the area. There were high dunes all around. About 20 or 30 people were standing together. Unfortunately, my weak dog eyes, I couldn't see them very well in the darkness. But I could hear them. I could hear them amazingly well. Sounds that I could barely have noticed with my human hearing were as loud as a boombox set on 9. And I could smell. It's funny about smell. As a human, you don't really get into it. But when I laid back and let my dog abilities come up, smell became as good as sight. Different, but just as good for some things. I heard Tom's voice, and I smelled a subtle combination of things that meant he was not too far away. There was a man on guard, but all he did was look down at me, then looked away. No one cares about a stray dog. I was beginning to realize why Andalites had given us the power to morph. There are things you can do as an animal that you could never do as a human. The members all seemed to be waiting for someone to arrive. I heard Tom say, "He should be here soon. Wait, here he comes." There was a stirring, muttering sound. I heard footsteps approach. I moved closer but stayed out of the light. "Everyone quiet. We have problems," the voice said. The voice, I knew the voice. It was the same voice that had been at the construction site. It was the voice that had said, "Just save the head, bring that to me, and we can identify it." I crept a little closer. I had to look hard to see him with my dog sight, but then when he turned just the right way, I saw him. I recognized him. It was someone I knew, someone I saw every day at school. None other than Assistant Principal Chapman. My assistant principal was a controller. Item 1. We still have not found those brats who were at the construction site, Chapman said. His voice was hard. I want them found. Visitor 3 wants them found. Does anyone have any clues? For a moment, no one spoke. Then I heard a second familiar voice. It could have been anyone, Tom said, but it might be the one that knows my brother Jake. I know he goes through the construction site sometimes. That's why I brought him here, tonight, so we could either make him ours or kill him. Chapter 15. Either we make him ours or kill him. I felt like someone had punched me. I told myself that Tom was a human controller. Some slimy, snotty slug from another planet was in his brain controlling him. When he talked to me, it wasn't even Tom. Not really. It was a Yerk. My brother, one of them. Chapman, one of them. They were everywhere. Everywhere. How were we going to stop them? How could we even try? If they could take my own brother from me, if they could take Tom, then how was I going to be able to stop them? It was insane. Marco was right. I think if I had been fully human right then, despair would have just overpowered me. But dogs don't know about despair. It was Homer's simple, happy, hopeful mind that saved me. For a while, I just sort of let go, drifting into a dog's consciousness. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to be a human being. For a while, I just wandered around the dunes and smelled things. But I knew I had a job to do. After a while, I let go of the simple happiness of a dog and forced myself back into the painful reality. I waited and listened to some more of the meeting, but I was still so upset, so I didn't really keep track of what was being said. I just kept hearing it over and over in my head. Make him ours or kill him. The one other thing that did stick in my mind was Tom discussing with some other guy, some other controller, the schedule for going to the Yerk pool. He had just been and was feeling good. He said he'd be heading back on Monday night. That was the slug in the head talking. The Yerk that controlled Tom needed to return to the Yerk pool. Then I heard another voice. Cassie. I slunk quickly around the back of the dune to get closer, but I could hear clearly Cassie's voice and another voice. It took me a minute to recognize. It was the policeman. The same policeman. "Hey, what are you doing back there?" the policeman demanded. "I was just looking for shells," Cassie said. "This is just for full members," the police says, gruffly. "Private business. You understand?" "Yes, sir," Cassie said, in the most humble voice. I got to where I could see them, although I have to tell you, Dogside is not exactly great. Everything is like an old TV with bad color and all blurry. The policeman was staring hard at Cassie. Cassie was trying to be brave, but I could smell the fact that she was afraid. "Okay, take off," the policeman said at last. "But I have my eye on you. Get back with the others." Cassie turned and headed away as fast as she could walk. I caught up with her. I guess seeing a dog come bounding out of nowhere startled her, because she jumped. "Oh, it's you," she said. "Yeah, that was close. What were you doing there?" She shrugged. "Just wanted to make sure you were okay." "I was safer than you were," I pointed out. We got back to the spot where Rachel, Marco, and Tobias were waiting. I didn't even want to morph back into my human body. I knew that I could just let myself go again, and in a few minutes my dog brain would forget why my human brain was sad. If someone would just throw a stick out into the surf, I could go after it. The water would make me happy. Chasing would make me happy. Now I knew why Tobias was so reluctant to leave his hawk body. Being an animal could be a nice way to escape from all your troubles. I began to morph back into my own body. Cassie and Rachel turned and looked out toward the water. When I was completely myself again, I said, Marco, you were right. Tom is the controller. Marco did not look pleased about being right. I told them what Tom had said to Chapman about bringing me to the meeting to either use me or kill me. Wait a minute, Chapman is one of them too? Rachel asked. Our Chapman, Mr. Chapman, the assistant principal? I think he's some kind of leader, I said. It was him the other night at the construction site. He was the one who told the Hork-Bajir to keep the head. That is so, Chapman, Marco said. I suggest we get the heck out of here, Tobias said. No, it's okay, I said. Chapman told Tom there was not to be any killing at the sharing meeting. They don't want any suspicious activity. He also said they couldn't just go around killing every kid who might be at the construction site. They needed to be sure. That's decent of them, Rachel said dryly. Not really. Chapman just said that for a while longer they still have to avoid attracting too much attention. A bunch of kids start turning up dead and people will definitely notice. He said they should just wait. Kids can't keep quiet for long about seeing aliens. When the kids talk, the controllers will find them and get rid of them. Except that we aren't going to talk about what we saw, Rachel said. You got that right, Mako agreed. We aren't saying anything. We are forgetting everything we saw and we're getting on with our normal lives. And leave Tom the way he is, I demanded. No way, never. He's my brother. I'm going to save him. Just how do you figure you'll do that? Marcos asked sarcastically. Let's see. It's you versus Chapman, the cops, a bunch of Hork-Bajirs, Taxons, and worst of all, the Crete Visor 3. All you can do to fight them is turn into a dog and bite their ankles. It's like being stuck in the most impossible video game ever invented. I grinned, or at least I showed my teeth. Yeah, it is, kind of, but I'm pretty good at video games. And he won't be alone, Rachel said. I'm in this too. And me, Tobias said. Me too, Cassie agreed. Swell, Marco said. So suddenly you're the Fantastic Four. This isn't a comic book, this is real. We heard the sound of people coming through the dunes. The meeting of the full members had broken up. Everyone quiet, I said. We'll let this ride for now. I said that to calm Marco down. I had no intention of letting it ride. I pulled Cassie aside. Listen, Cassie, I needed an animal morph that will let me watch Chapman without him seeing me. What do you have at the farm? Cassie got quiet for a moment. Let me think. We have a lot of injured birds, of course. We have the wolf with a broken leg. We have the wildcat with one eye. I waited a while. I waited while she went down a list of all the animals at the wildlife rehabilitation clinic. Suddenly, Cassie snapped her fingers. I wonder, how small an animal do you think we can morph? I shrugged. I had no idea. I may have something in mind, she said. It's not really in the clinic as a patient. It just sort of lives there. It's small, it can crawl up walls, it's fast if you need to get away, and I guess it can hear and see okay. Which is how I ended up in Cassie's barn later that night, crawling beneath cages full of sick buzzards, and in between a pair of jumpy deer looking for lizards.